I have such a special treat for you on the podcast today. I'm going to be talking with my son, Caleb, about the 40-day flip phone challenge that we did a couple months ago. If you get my newsletter, you might remember that we ditched our iPhones and went to Nokia flip phones. It was an eye-opening experience that we can't wait to share with you. When I invited Caleb onto the podcast, I asked him to send me a bio. He basically sent me a note that said, I'm just a regular dude. So I went ahead and wrote this bio for him. By the way, it's all true. Caleb Whiting is a college student at Moody Bible Institute who loves to take on challenges, especially in the great outdoors. Some of his adventures include backpacking through Europe, road tripping through North America, including Canada, the United States, and Mexico, working at a salmon plant in Alaska, serving rock climbers in the Patagonia Mountains of Argentina, hitchhiking across the United States from ocean to ocean, riding motorcycles to remote villages in Madagascar to share the gospel, and hiking the equivalent of one of the 7 summits in his college dorm to raise money for Israelis affected by the war. He called it the Conquer Colby Challenge. He climbed 56,200 stairs, went a distance of 26.2 miles, and climbed for 13 and a half hours. Caleb's zest for life and adventurous spirit are rivaled only by his love for people and his heart to serve. Hi, friend. You're listening to Find Hope Here. I'm your host, Teresa Whiting, author, speaker, ministry leader, friend, and fellow struggler. This is a podcast about the messy, complicated, painful parts of life, but also the beautiful, joy-filled hope that Jesus promises. Each week, we dig deep into God's Word together and talk about how His truth impacts our everyday lives. I'm not going to ask you to sit with me and have coffee because I seem to have my best conversations while I'm just doing life. So I'd love to hang out with you as you walk or fold laundry or drive to work. You're invited to join me in pursuing the hope God promises. No matter where you are or where you've been, I pray you always find hope here. Let's jump into today's episode. Well, friends, I am introducing you to Caleb Whiting. I'm so excited and I'm honored to have him on the podcast. So, Caleb, welcome. And why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? I could talk about you for a long time, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Mom. It's an honor to be here. I love what you do, and so it's awesome to be here today. Yes, I'm Caleb. I am currently a college student, first semester senior, so in my last year at Moody Bible Institute up in Chicago. I I don't think I have senioritis too bad, but I'm definitely not going to be disappointed when it's time to graduate. I tend to be kind of restless and like to move from place to place, but the more that I've been here at college, the better it's gotten. So I'm just here to learn about the Bible, learn about theology. I want to have a solid foundation so I can know the Lord well and know how to study His Word through the rest of my life, wherever I end up going. I love adventure. I like challenges. I want to do something that's involved with serving people afterwards. So interested in disaster relief, that sort of thing. But just taking things one step at a time right now.
Tell us about your summer internship that's coming up.
Yeah. So I have a summer internship with Samaritan's Purse. I'll be based out of North Carolina, working with their North American Ministries team, which I'm really looking forward to. I think that will be a great opportunity just to kind of get to know the organization, see how they do things from the inside. And I love how they bring the gospel, and they also bring aid and relief to people that are hurting. So I'm really excited to get involved with them and see where that goes.
Yeah. I'm excited that's working out for you. So we're here today to talk about the flip phone challenge that you and I did.
Yes.
So let's talk about what led to the challenge and why in the world would you, as a college student, want to use a flip phone as opposed to a smartphone?
Yeah. Well, as I'm sure you remember, we had about a 3 hour conversation one night where we were just, I guess, kind of ranting going on about our culture and how connected we are to our phones. And not just people out there, but how connected we are to our phones and
Hmm.
technology and how dependent we are on it. And how it kind of drives us crazy because we realize that it takes so much of our time and our attention away from the things that really matter and that are important to us. So, I think we were just throwing around ideas. The first idea was maybe a year. Thankfully, we changed that down to, I know, maybe we said a week and we kind of settled on 40 days. But probably for a lot of the same reasons that you were interested, just as an experiment, as what would happen if we did get rid of our smartphones for 40 days and did switch to a flip phone. But I mean, I was just wondering what kind of benefits would this have? It's something I wanted to do, but it was hard for me to just do on my own. So I wouldn't have done it without you, Mom. So thank you for doing it with me and tell me a little bit about why you wanted to do this too.
Yeah, same. I think I wouldn't have done the challenge by myself, so it was really fun to be able to do it together and to know I wasn't the only crazy person around. So we actually got matching phones. Let's show them our matching phones.
Yes,
They look like toys, right?
they
It's
do.
like
And they
it
feel like
literally
toys.
looks like a toy. For me, as we talked, one of the things that has always bothered me is I look at my screen time usually every
Mhm.
Sunday. And I was just seeing week after week after week, 24 hours, 30 hours, 32 hours. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm losing an entire day every single week to my phone. That's
Wow.
52 days a year. Some of our family members were like, you guys aren't even on your phones a lot. If you compare us to the general public, we don't play
Right.
games. We're not on social
Right.
media. We're not doing all the things, but somehow all this time just got sucked away into my phone. I have this fantasy of just throwing my phone in the ocean or running it over with my car. But we didn't. We were like, okay, let's be reasonable. Let's figure out, can we do this? Can we live without a smartphone in 2024? So I'm curious, what did you notice when you first started?
Wow. The first day, I felt like I had superpowers. I remember I took a walk outside and I was like everything looked brighter. Like the sky was more blue, the grass was more green. I felt like I could just hear birds singing that I didn't notice before. I remember I was walking down the street and I was like, I smell pine needles. Like there's not even pine trees. And I looked down and there were bunches of pine needles, like leftover Christmas decoration someone had had. And I was like, this is crazy. Like I feel like all of my senses were just expounded to some new level. I just felt like, wow, what have I been missing out on? I feel like that was kind of, the first few days was just noticing a lot
Mm-hmm.
more. Also noticing how much other people were stuck on their phones. Because when I had mine, it was almost normal because I would pull it out all the time and check it for things. But once that was taken away, I realized, wow, everyone is always on their phone everywhere. Even taking a walk to the dog park, half of the people who are walking their dogs have their AirPods in and they're listening to something. And I love listening to podcasts. We're here on a podcast.
Right.
Podcasts are great things. But I noticed even a few days before it started, I was at the grocery store and I was listening to something and I looked around and I noticed almost everyone had something in their ears. Which is just kind of crazy. It seems like everyone is always in their own world. And so it's really difficult to interact with other people because we're always off doing our own thing, even when we're together. And
Mm.
so the first few days was just kind of like, wow, a breath of fresh air. Like I didn't realize how attached I was until I stepped away from it. What did you notice though? What was it like at the very beginning for
I
you?
remember I remember my first day. I was driving in the car and obviously I didn't have my phone. I didn't have directions, so I was going old school, printing out MapQuest, and I felt the same thing. Like I was looking around as I was driving. I didn't have anything to listen to. So I was just driving and I was noticing like these places that I've been before, I was noticing landmarks that I hadn't seen before. The fact that there were cows out there grazing, and I'm like, oh, I never even knew that there were cows around here. So just all these little things that I hadn't noticed before because I was always distracted. Even if I wasn't looking at my phone while I was driving, I was listening, I was thinking about other things. What were some of the challenges for you?
Yeah, texting is definitely annoying, just so annoying on flip phones because you can't speak a text. It's just not nearly as fast. It probably takes 5 times the amount of time to send a text message. I think one of my biggest concerns was being without the map feature. Because although our flip phones did have maps, I think we both realized pretty quickly that they were completely insufficient and really didn't work at all. But it was actually really interesting because I think we started on a Wednesday. A few days later, it was Sunday, and I said, okay, I'm driving to church today. Mind you, I've been going to this church for almost a year now, and I realized I don't think I know how to get to church without my maps, without my phone. And I realized how ridiculous that was because I've been going here for so long. So I looked at directions on the computer, I wrote them down, and I still got lost. I still went the wrong way, and I still ended up getting to church 30 minutes late. And I was like, well, I guess that says something, that maps are helpful. But by the time I got back from church, I knew how to get there. I realized it's actually really simple. I'm only taking 5 roads. I only have to make like 4 turns. And the next Sunday I drove there, I didn't even have to use my maps. And now I know how to get to my church. And it only took that one time. And it made
Right.
me realize how dependent I am on my phone. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
noticed that too. One of the things that I realized right away is that I was constantly reaching. Like I would reach for my phone and then I'd be like, oh, there's nothing to do with this thing.
Right.
Um, and another thing that I missed was, hey, Siri, call Greg. I did miss
Hmm.
that. Um, and the amount of time that it took to send a text. But I
Yeah.
also realized, okay, so I'm spending 5 minutes sending a text that could take me like 2 minutes, but I'm not spending 8 to 10 hours on my phone either. So I feel like the trade off was inconvenience for time. And I
Yeah.
think I liked having the time. There were some things that were frustrating, things
Right.
that were annoying, but there were also things that we both really liked. So, what were some of the
Yes.
things you found that you loved?
I felt like I had so much freedom. I almost felt it's too strong to say enslaved to my phone. But I did feel like I was missing something if I didn't have it, like I was gonna miss out on something. But because there's really nothing to do on a flip phone except for make texts and phone calls, I would only look at it maybe 5 times a day. I would pull it out compared to, I don't know, the 50 times I would pick up my phone
Mm-hmm.
before that. And and so I just felt a level of freedom. Like I wasn't attached. I never had it in my pocket. I always just kept it in my backpack and I would check it a few times a day. But I never had that almost that like FOMO anxiety of I need to check my phone. What if there's something going on? And so I think that was the biggest thing that I liked about it. If I needed to get in touch with someone, I would get in touch with them. And a few times a day, I would check to see if someone needed to get in touch with me. It definitely, on some level, even if it was a small level, lowered the amount of stress and anxiety that I felt day to day. And I can't lie, I also enjoyed the conversations it would open up with people, as I'm sure you realize, a lot of people react in really interesting ways when they see someone on the flip phone. It's like they're looking at like a dinosaur walk through town.
Yeah.
It's just so unusual to them. And so that opens up just opportunities to have conversations and challenge other people and talk about these things. What was it for you that you liked the most?
For me, I noticed like this white space that hadn't been there before.
Hmm.
Because when I had my iPhone, it was just with me all the time. I would go on a walk and I'd be listening to a book or a podcast or talking to somebody I would take it with me in the car. I would take it with me in the bathroom. I mean, we all do,
Yeah.
right? So let's
Yeah.
just not pretend that we don't. It was just like always input, input, input.
Hmm.
And when that stopped, I felt like my creative juices started to flow again. Like I started thinking about things I want to write, things I want to talk about it. I felt like my brain could breathe. I don't know if that makes sense, but like with the constant input, it just is overwhelming. It's overwhelming to my nervous system. And without this constant input, I was like, oh, I have a brain. Like I can think again. I can look around. I would notice things. I would go on more walks and just feel that freedom that you said. And you use the word stress and anxiety. Nobody needs to do a scientific study to tell us that our phones are causing a lot of stress and anxiety. And they are now. They're coming out with all the studies and they're saying, this is damaging to us, the things that we're doing, being constantly connected. It's not healthy for our bodies, our minds, our souls, our relationships. But I don't think you need to a scientific experiment. I think we all, if we're honest, we feel that, we see it, we know it. Do you have any good stories? I love hearing you tell stories. Do you have a story about life with a smartphone?
Yeah, it's easy to, especially in this conversation, and getting excited about the benefits of downgrading to just say, oh, smartphones are the worst and they make us stressed and anxious and they take away all our time. But there certainly are benefits. One thing that I was reminded of was when I was out in California on a road trip with my friend, and you called me and you said, I just had lunch with this woman, and her nephew is walking across America right now. And you told me his name, and I thought that was just the coolest thing I ever heard. So at the time, I had Instagram, and so I looked him up and I messaged him and I asked him, is there any chance me and my friend can join you as you walk across your last state, as you walk across California? And we ended up taking a bus out to the middle of California and walking with Josh Sherling, who's a complete legend, walked across the entire country on his own 2 feet from ocean to ocean. We got to walk with him his last 100 miles or so, and it was some of the like most fun like 2 weeks of our life. And I don't know if that would have happened if I wasn't able to connect with him through Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing I've been thinking about lately, and I've been taking a poll of people to try to find out how many meaningful relationships in their life would they have missed out on if they didn't have a smartphone or social media, or how many experiences would they have missed out on. And for most people, I've been finding it's actually either none or very, very, very few. That was one that I thought of that, oh, if I didn't have my smartphone, maybe I would have missed out on this. Um, so there are certainly some positive things like that.
As we're talking about adventures and phones, I know that after you met Josh, you had an adventure of your own where you decided you were going to hitchhike from ocean to ocean. And you did it without a smartphone, like you did it with a dumb phone. Can you tell us a little bit about that adventure? First of all, why did you choose to do it that way? Why did you choose to go with a dumb phone? And then also, do you think it changed what your experience might have been, and if so, in what way?
Yeah. So to the first question, I wanted to do it that way because I wanted it to be like an old-fashioned adventure. I worked as a lifeguard in high school, and sometimes at 5:30 in the morning, I'd be sitting on the side of the hot tub listening to retirees tell me about their life, and they'd ask me what I was doing when I graduated high school. I had no intentions of going to college. I just wanted to travel and go on adventures, and that would spark them to tell me, oh, when I was your age, I did this. I hitchhiked here. I went on this journey. Or some people would say, I just I never did anything like that. I was just so caught up in the next thing to next thing to next thing. And I really wish I would have taken some time to travel or to go on an adventure. But that having those conversations and then meeting people like Josh inspired me to think, wow, I would love to have an adventure where I'm not dependent on technology, but it's just me and the road and just, my thumb and heading west and just meeting people and seeing what it's like to hitchhike across the country. I almost feel like that's a classic American journey or road trip, or at least that it used to be, but you never hear about people doing that type of thing anymore. And so in an effort to make it more of an authentic experience, I left my phone. And to appease you, I bought a flip phone, of course, so I could call you
Yes.
and let you know I was okay. Um,
So do you think it would have been a different experience if you had gone with a smartphone?
yes, I think there would have been positives and negatives to it. I think the only positive aspect of if I had a smartphone is number one, I wouldn't have been afraid to get so off trail. I was taking Interstate 10 from Jacksonville, Florida to Los Angeles, and in my mind, I can just stay on this one road, easy peasy. As long as I don't get off track, I'll be fine because I don't have a map. I don't have any way to get back on track if I do get off track. And so I was scared of going off track, which may have kept me from being willing to, take an excursion away from Interstate 10. And if I had a smartphone, I wouldn't have been concerned because I could just look it up on maps and figure that out easy. However, I think there were more positives to it because I think if I was going and, maybe vlogging about it or posting on social media, I think it would have tainted the interactions I had with people because you act differently if you're in a car with someone and you're just driving somewhere talking. But if there's a camera on and you're being recorded, you want the whole world to think that, you're kind and you're amazing and hospitable. And I didn't want that to be the case. I didn't want people to be influenced in the way that they were acting because I was filming or recording the journey. Although people were surprised I wasn't. People would say, "Oh, are you a YouTuber? How are you documenting this?" Because I guess it's just expected with a trip like that.
So after this experiment, tell us honestly if you think it's realistic for people to live without a smartphone in today's society.
It's certainly realistic, but it's also certainly inconvenient. As we both noticed over the last 40 days, everything is catered to people with a smartphone because it's expected that everyone will have a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
I got wedding invitations that had a QR code on them, which is the only way to access the website. Uh, I remember you told me our Wi-Fi went out, and you couldn't even change the Wi-Fi without downloading an app on the, and you couldn't download the app on that phone. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yes, it's possible, and plausible to live in today's world and culture without a smartphone. And you just have to realize you're giving some things up automatically with that. And then you have to weigh, okay, well, what am I gaining? I'm losing some things. Sure, I'm losing some conveniences, but what am I gaining instead? Um, I think I need to realize anytime I say yes to something, I'm automatically saying no to everything else, right?
Yes.
So if I'm saying yes to my smartphone and these tools and this access to everything, that means I'm also saying no to maybe a lot of spontaneous adventures that I wouldn't have if I had a smartphone because I've got my maps up and I've got my set direction. I know exactly where I'm going and what I'm doing, or just relationships that I would miss out on. Um, it was, I think, the Sunday after we began, I was walking back from the dining room after eating lunch to my apartment, and normally I probably would have, headphones in, my AirPods, just listening to a podcast or something, maybe
Right.
checking for text. But I didn't because I had my flip phone and it was just I don't even think it was in my pocket. I normally just left it in my room. And there was a guy pulled over right outside our school, and I noticed he had to sit up, and I just was like, "Oh, I something's going on there." So I said, "Hey, is everything all right? Do you need to jump?" He was like, "Yes, my battery died. The jump would be super helpful." So, and my car was right there. I just parked it from church. So I grabbed it, went down, jumped it, 5-minute thing. Didn't take a long time at all. But for him, it was a huge deal because he was going to be late for work. He was going to get in trouble. And I realized, wow, that made a big impact in his day. And it made me feel awesome too for being able to help someone. And he was super enthusiastic and encouraging too. And I realized I think I would have missed out on that if I
Mm,
had my smartphone. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but I think I just like you said, that white space of just being aware of what's going on and having time to think and notice things.
yeah.
So much of that is taken away and is gone with the smartphone, and we don't realize it until we step away.
Yeah.
So now that we've gone back, and now that I have my iPhone again, I'm realizing even with just the simple tools on my phone, it affects my relationships with other things, like my computer. I never like binge watched YouTube or a show or wasted all this time when I was on my dumb phone with this challenge because my brain wasn't working that way. I wasn't looking to other things for distraction. It forced me to use that white space that we were talking about and actually think about some issues in my life that I've been kind of ignoring or pushing to the side. And so that was another challenge, was actually having to be faced with, okay, I'm not just going to blot out the thoughts that are coming to my mind right now with the distraction, with the song, with the podcast, with the text. Actually, there's something that I need to work through here with this different personal issues in my life. Um, and so while it's while I've gone back, I've realized I'm just spiraling again. And again, it's not as dramatic as other people, right? My screen time isn't crazy. I'm not on all of these social medias for a long time, but I still notice that it affects me a lot in a negative way.
Mm,
And so I'm trying to build up the courage to say, okay, this isn't just an experiment, but this is what I need to do for just for the health of my life. And just because I think this is the right path for me for right now. Doesn't mean it's forever, it doesn't mean it's for everyone. But this challenge has been super helpful in opening my eyes to the benefits of living with the dumb phone and without a smartphone. And now I think I just need some encouragement to make the jump and to stick with
hmm.
it because I do think this is right for me. Coming to the end of it, switching back, what has it been like for you? What are some of your observations moving forward? Just noticing this last week, how have things been shifting in your mind in relationship to the challenge, to what it's like to be back on your phone now, and for what things are going to be like moving forward?
Okay, so I think one of the things I wanted to mention before I talk about coming to the end of the challenge, one thing I noticed was I deal with a lot of anxiety. Like I'm always feeling overwhelmed and like, oh, it's a million things bouncing around in my head. I thought that getting rid of my iPhone would solve that, and it didn't. So there was a part of me that's like, well, you might as well just have an iPhone because you're going to be overwhelmed no matter what. That's just who you are. It's in your head. But then there was another part of me that was like, okay, so obviously it's not my phone that is causing me anxiety, but I will say it contributes to it. And the fact that I was without a smartphone and I was still dealing with that gave me, like you said, like things to work through. Like, okay, so this isn't attached to, it's not attached to social media. It's not attached to having a phone. It's actually something that comes up in me no matter what is going on in my life. So that was interesting. It was something for me to think through. Um, but then coming back to it, what I have noticed there is like this subconscious pull towards it. But
Hmm.
I loved what you said about every yes is a no and every no is a yes. You know, we talked about missing out. Everybody's afraid of missing out, missing out, missing out. I'm afraid that I'm going to miss out on the life that's in front of me if my face is behind a screen. Like
Hmm.
that's a bigger fear for me than missing out on what's going on my phone. Like I don't want to miss life. I don't want to miss the
Yeah.
people. I don't want to miss the facial expressions or the tone of voice or the body language because I'm not looking at people. There is a fear of missing out, but maybe we're afraid of missing the wrong stuff. I don't know. And
Hmm.
I'm talking to myself. I'm not like preaching to all you people out there.
Right.
I'm really and truly I'm talking to myself. And you mentioned a couple times social media, but tell me about your decision because you're a college student and you're not on social media. what made you decide not to be on social media?
I think we all know that social media is bad for us. Um, it's interesting that almost anyone you talk to, if I say to them, should I get social media? They'll say, no, don't do it, even though they have it. We
Wow.
we all know, like I've been having this conversation with people the last few days, and everyone's saying, no, don't do it. Yeah, I have it, but don't do it. We all know that it makes us compare ourselves to other people. We know that it creates FOMO, and I think it also creates a false sense of connection because we feel, okay, I know what's happening in everyone's life. We're good, we're connected. But it doesn't seem like a genuine connection to me. And there's something to be said about that. Like there are a lot of people in my life right now that I don't really know where they are or what they're doing. And of course, they're not everyone is someone that's close enough to you that you're going to have their phone number and call them every now and then. And
Right.
so, yeah, that's the negative side of not having social media is I just I don't know what's happening with a lot of people. Um, but also in today's day and age, I think that's probably a good thing because with the news and social media, we all know what's happening all around the world all the time. And we are pressured to feel like we need to have an opinion about everything that's happening all the time. And one thing that we've talked about in the past is we're just not created to contain so much and have so much knowledge about what's happening everywhere. It stresses us out and we can't do something about everything. And so maybe that's a positive of not having social media. But the biggest thing for me is it just makes me it furthers the temptation to be self-centered and to put myself on a pedestal. Because for me, I feel like that's what Instagram is. It's a platform. I put my picture there. I put a bio about myself so that people can see me, and then I post things about myself. And the temptation is too strong for me to try to make myself look a certain way in people's eyes. And for a long time, I've wanted it to be a platform where I can inspire people, maybe to go on adventures or do challenges, or maybe I can raise awareness or raise money for good causes out there. Because I like that kind of thing. There are lots of causes out there that I want to get people excited about that I would love to raise money for. And I want to inspire people to, travel more or adventure more or do these good things. But my default is just this is about me. This is my platform. And I don't think that's healthy for me. Some people can probably do it very well, but I can't. And so I just had to decide, okay, I'm not going to be on social media. The relationships in my life are going to be relationships that are in person. And if I really want to know how someone's doing, I can get their phone number and I can call them. But social media is just too big of a temptation to make my life about myself. And that's already a temptation not having social media. So I don't want to further that through
Mm,
social media.
yeah. Yeah.
But I feel that you have come to a really healthy, to have a healthy relationship with social media, where I can think back a few years ago, when you were constantly in turmoil about should I delete Facebook? Should I keep it? But that doesn't seem to be a problem for you anymore. What has your journey been like, and how did you get to where you are now?
Yes. So you're remembering the days of us sitting on the couch. I remember one night you're
Yes.
like, "Give me your phone," and you deleted my Facebook page, and I literally woke up in the morning having a panic attack. I was like, I can't be without Facebook. I mean, like so crazy. Um, I'll tell you, Instagram, I never could do it. I tried like three separate times to do Instagram because I'm a writer and I'm a speaker. And in this industry, quote unquote, you have to have a platform. I mean, the first question any publisher asks is, what are your platform numbers? That's the first and the most important question. And if you don't have 55,000 followers or 100,000 followers, you can just forget the idea of ever writing or publishing anything traditionally. So it was a big, like there's a big temptation of like I have to do this. I don't have a choice. And I finally came to say, I guess I'm never going to be traditionally published because I can't do that and do the deep work necessary. I love Cal Newport's books, Deep Work and Digital Minimalism, because he talks about how our brain capacity, like we can't do deep work when we're being distracted all day long.
Mm,
And that's what I think social media does. That's what our phones do. And so for me, Instagram, I tried it. Every time I got on, I would just spiral into this dark hole of comparison, and I have nothing to say, and everybody else is saying it better, and they're bigger and they're more important, and I just need to be quiet and go home. So Instagram, I think I have an Instagram, but I have not posted one thing on it, and I don't plan to. And I follow my three daughters and my niece. That's it. And I don't even look at it on a regular basis. I don't have the app. I just every once in a while I'll look, and there's a big part of me that's like, why do you have that? And just get rid of it. Facebook, I do have a Facebook account, but I haven't been active on it. And I also unfollowed everybody. And I put a Chrome extension on my laptop that is basically when you go on to Facebook, it doesn't show a feed. There's no feed. It just has like a little inspirational quote. So I sometimes get on there because I'm connected in a writers group, and I'm in a podcasting group, and I'm in a speakers group. So sometimes I have a question like, hey, you know, I don't know, how do you get an ISBN number? Or what do you do for this? Or whatever. It's just some kind of like technical or question like that. So I do occasionally get on there, but it doesn't have the hold on me that it used to. Like, I'm not posting regularly. I'm not stressing out about it. I guess I feel like I don't need it. I'm not depending on that to build a platform because that's not my goal anymore. Like, I kind of, when I was first in this writing group that I'm in, there was all this information like you need to build a platform. Like, that was the mantra of like, you must build a platform. And when I finally realized, like, no, like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do the work that I think I'm supposed to be doing. I will put it out there. So I do have a podcast. I am actually recording video, and I've been recording video. So I'm starting to put these on YouTube, but I'm not looking at that as like, oh, I'm building a platform. It's just like, no, I have this stuff. I'm going to share it. Um, I will also say this. I really don't like what it breeds in people. And so I don't want to be part of the system, if you will. Like,
yeah.
I feel like if I put stuff on Instagram and Facebook all the time, then I'm directing people like, hey, go onto Instagram and go onto Facebook and get sucked into this endless scroll that makes you feel like a worm by the end of the day. And I'm like, why would I want to do that to people? So,
Yeah.
um,
For people that might be wondering, what was the Chrome extension that kind of helped you with the Facebook?
oh, it's called the Facebook Newsfeed Eradicator. And I can
Oh,
I can put that in the show notes too.
yeah. And another one that helped me, it's called Unhook. Where I waste time is on YouTube. And so you can literally just shut off everything so that you're not seeing any suggestions. If you go to YouTube, you can only find something by searching for it. So that's another
Oh,
tool that might
good.
help people.
I'll put that in. I'll put that in too. That's awesome. Um, would you say that this experiment affected your relationship with other people or with God in any way?
Yes. As far as my relationship with other people, I think it has, and not in any drastic way, but I think it has made me more present with other people. I'm less likely to look at my phone during a conversation. There's not as much just going on in my brain all the time, which I think helps in relationships and just being present, being able to focus on who you're talking to and what you're talking about. So I think it did help in a positive way in my relationships and in my relationship with God. I think it was a good thing as well. The very first few days, were just kind of this crazy, wow, everything is amazing. And that fades and you adjust. And and now it's normal. Um, Although I think it is a different normal um, when we were doing the challenge. And I think one of those things was that forced me to just kind of think about things and wrestle with things that I don't want to think about and wrestle with because they're hard. We all have hard things in our life that we just want to push off for another time. But during the last 40 days, I can look back, and I don't think I actually realized this until now. Um, but I can look back and say, oh, that was something that I thought a lot about and worked on and prayed about a lot during this time. I think also what you mentioned, we wake up and the first thing most of us do is check our phone. It was true of me, but not when I had my Nokia because what am I going to do, you know? And so for the majority of that 40-day challenge we did, I was spending time with the Lord in the morning first thing rather than checking my phone. And so I think that had a positive impact as well.
And then, is there a passage of scripture that motivates you to be less digitally connected?
Yeah. The passage that came to mind is First Peter 4:7, which says, "The end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers." The reason this verse came to mind was, well, certainly I can struggle with self-control when it comes to my phone and my relationship with technology. The sober-minded piece is what stuck out to me more because being so connected to technology, it can just kind of take over our brain and we don't even realize it that there is just a constant input of our own doing. In the morning, first thing I would do is, okay, maybe I have my time with the Lord and then I'll put on music, even if it's worship music, which is a good thing while I'm eating breakfast, cleaning my room, getting ready for the day. Or I'm taking a walk, putting on a podcast. It just constant noise and input and distractions, I think, is one thing that can keep us from being sober minded. And right after that, he says, sober minded for what purpose? For the sake of your prayers. You mentioned that you were praying more during the last 40 days because what else are you going to do when you're walking somewhere or driving somewhere? This specific verse that this addressing the church, talking about how the end of all things is at hand. Like, we're living in a day and age when there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world. And we don't know when, but Jesus is going to come back soon. And there's work to be done. God has given all of us some mission in his plan of world redemption. Some of us, like me, are still figuring out what that is and wondering and asking him. And if we're always distracted and our brains are foggy because of technology, I think that's one thing that keeps us from being sober-minded for the sake of our prayers and focusing on maybe some things that God has for us we might miss out on. Maybe we could be more sober-minded. Speaking for myself, I think I was more, and I think through this challenge I'm recognizing I'm more sober-minded when I don't have my smartphone. And if that means that allows me a clearer, better relationship with God in some way, then it's worth it. Then why would I trade that for anything?
Yeah. Oh, that's good. The passage that comes to my mind is Psalm 90:12. So teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom or present a heart of wisdom. And earlier in Psalm 90, it talks about how our life is short, 70 years, maybe 80, and they're soon gone and we fly away. And it's like we have this little span of time on the earth. And I look at the hours and hours and hours I have spent on my smartphone, and I just think, is that how I want to spend my days? Is that how I want to spend my hours? Well, Caleb, we are out of time. This has been so awesome. I just want to thank you for being here. Thanks for being my guest. Thanks for doing this experiment with me. And I would love for us to check back in even in a few months and see what are we doing? Where are we at?
Yeah, I would love that. Well, it's been so fun talking with you, Mom. Thanks for doing this challenge with me.
Wasn't that so much fun? I'm so glad you had the opportunity to meet Caleb. By the way, if you haven't heard yet, I am also uploading these podcast episodes to YouTube. So there's a link in the show notes. Thanks for hanging out with me today on Find Hope Here. To find anything we mentioned on the episode, go to teresawhiting.com/listen, and that's where you can find all the show notes. I want to leave you with this prayer from Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you may abound in hope.